here with one of the greatest metal singers of all time, fantastic, legendary Michael Kiske. How are you, Michael?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. I'm very good.
It's great to be chatting with you, and this is a very special time for you, I suppose, because you're just about to release the new Helloween album. Did you ever
Yeah,
imagine that you'd be releasing a Helloween album again?
for a long time I didn't. I mean, it was impossible to even think about something like that. For a long time actually. It let me think. I think the first serious thoughts about this in this direction was around maybe 14, 15. That's when things changed. I mean, I noticed that things have changed or had changed inside of myself. Yeah. But before that, I was actually getting pissed when someone of the other guys was mentioning something like that. Andy Darius actually was years before he was talking in interviews about this, that he would love to do something like that, and I was like, oh, that's never gonna happen.
And what can you tell us about this album in terms of the music and the production? It's you worked again with your old partner Dennis Ward, and I don't know if you have worked before with Charlie Bauerfeind.
Yeah. I did 2 solo records with him in the 90s.
Hmm.
I mean, once I was recording with him and mixing, and one album he mixed with me. Yeah, I knew him from the 90s.
And how challenging was it to record, to write the songs? I mean, I don't know if you I don't think you participated that much on the writing, but
Oh,
to record and to make the pre-production in terms of doing it in a very particular time and with the pandemic going on.
no, the pandemic was not there when we finished. Actually, I was the mixing. Yes, the mixing we did in the pandemic, but all the recording was done. I mean, I finished the vocals early last year, like just when it started, when they had the first kind of restrictions in Spain, because I did the vocals at Andy Darius' studio with him together, and I flew back when they just started with it, but the recording was not affected by it at all. Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, when you don't write a song, it makes it a lot easier, because when you write songs, you always have to make sure that things go your way and everything gets recorded. But if you don't, it's much easier. I was basically just taking care of my vocals when it was time.
But suppose you were affected personally by the pandemic. How bad was it for you? And do you think we can get something positive from this whole experience as humans?
Yeah, I think I you know materialists have a different way of looking at things like that than spiritual people. And I'm not talking necessarily religious people, but when you're spiritual, you look at life in a different way. You know, spirituality, if you're talking about real spirituality, it's not that you want to believe something, like materialists always like to put it. People are scared or they can't deal with life, so they make up these things so that they're not so scared anymore. That's not how it is. When you are spiritual, you have a different look at life. You see life differently. You see humans differently. And that, even though my parents were not like that at all, I was like that my entire life. And I knew something was coming. I knew, like 2 years before, I was writing an essay about things that are going to come over humanity, actually to help us to slow down and to help us kind of thinking about spirituality again. And actually, we have to go through a lot of these things in the next 30 years, I'm sure, to overcome the road down that we're at, like destroying Earth, not caring about each other. It's a very insane time. We're living much worse than we are. We understand a lot more things much better than we live. We know what's right and what's wrong, and we do a lot of things wrong, even though we know it's wrong. And it's not easy, a pandemic, and even though it's not as bad as the Spanish flu, millions died, and that is, of course, it's a bad thing, but it has a meaning, and it has a meaning, and it's supposed to tell us something, and it and you can tell, you can see that a lot of people that are open for changes and trying to make something good out of it, many are changing for the better. It's like one of the things that lies pretty clearly on the surface that you kind of notice right away is how good it is for nature, that everything is stopped, no planes or almost no planes, and that the nature can sort of breathe through again, and kind of, it's like an emergency brake that has been pulled, so everything has to stop, and I'm sure it will depend what we make out of it. A lot of things that are wrong in various countries, political things, or about media, about the so-called news, you can see so clearly how many things are wrong and need to be changed. They come to the forefront when things get a bit extreme and you have an exceptional situation. This is when the weaknesses show, of all the systems and everything. So this is an opportunity to change a whole bunch of things and make things better. We should definitely do that, and it will depend on how good we do that, what will come next, because the gods will adjust to how we react to that, because we are really on the way down. We destroy the planet, like I said, we're too selfish. We need to overcome the demons of the past, all this nationalism and not caring about each other and all these kind of things. And like I said, we live a lot worse than we actually are.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that we should take this as a lesson of how to evolve and care about each other, because if the person next to us is not going through it's not happy or not well, it affects us as well, right?
Yeah, we're one humanity. We really are. This kind of thing. The ego is an illusion. The ego exists. I know it does, but it's just a force. That's gonna be over when you're dead. You're not gonna be gone, but the ego will be gone, and then you will look at things in a completely different way. The ego is some sort of the darkness balance that we need, so we have something to fight with, to develop some strength, some moral strength. That's why darkness is there. That's why evil exists. As bad as it sometimes becomes, it's to learn the difference between good and evil. You need to experience it. We need to be connected and dealing with it, to figure out, all right, that's wrong. Otherwise, it would be just theory. You have to have it inside. We do have darkness inside, all of us. We're no angels, but we're supposed to become one day. But freedom is only possible when you have the choice. And that's why it's there. There's a lot of wisdom behind it. Even a lot of people use the reality of evil to condemn God and not to believe in God. It's because they don't think about it. They don't think about how love is possible. Love is only real in freedom. And freedom is only possible when you have choice. And that's why evil has to be there. It's not possible without it. We will not, when you have experienced betrayal, like a friend betrayed you, you learn to evaluate friendship, right? Out of that experience. When you have experienced hatred, that's when you learn to evaluate love, trust. When you've experienced darkness, you evaluate and value light. It's like it needs the opposite. It's a secret of evolution.
Yeah, do you guys share the same kind of philosophy towards life with the rest of the band? Is it difficult to balance everybody's opinions? I mean, you play in a band with six other people, and how do you deal when? I mean, of course you disagree in many points, but I
No, we
suppose you
don't.
have to agree in many things, right?
We agree in many things. It's like, of course, not everybody has a clear mind about this, okay? But in general, we all are idealistic, and we all have a positive look at life, and someone like Sasha, for instance, is very spiritual. Andy is spiritual, He's not as he's not as focused on it in a way that he is necessarily structuring all his life that way. But he has a spiritual life. He thinks about these things, and everything I talk about, he totally understands to a certain extent. It's like it's a not everybody is very concrete with it, but the general direction is pretty much the same. We don't want to stand for anything negative. We don't want to embrace darkness or these kind of things, which is some bands do, especially in the metal scene. But Helloween was always very different. We always had a good sense of humor, and we always had an uplifting kind of spirit. That's why I can still do it today. Songs like Eagle Fly Free, or like all the stuff that I've done with the band, I can completely still agree with it because it's positive. It doesn't spread darkness and depression.
And it shows when you're playing live that you have a great energy, and that reaches the audiences, and that's real. That's you can really feel it when you go to a Helloween show, right?
Yeah, that was something we did not know how it would go down in the beginning. We got together and it kind of felt right, but we had to try it out. So we went on this first tour, which was for me very difficult because I caught something in South America, which I didn't get rid of for the entire tour. It was really heavy, but it was still a great tour because of the audience and of the spirit. And we were all kind of surprised about the energy that we all together kind of create with the audience together. And that was a whole new experience. I almost forgot about it. Being off the scene for a long time and off the situation of being part of a band like this, I almost forgot about it. How that feels like, and that's pretty amazing. And it's also something you cannot design. It either happens or it doesn't.
Yeah, although you've been away from Helloween for a very long time, but you always worked with Kai Hansen, right? This is a very special partner in your music career.
We never really had any problems. My main clash was with Waiki in those days, and Waiki was sort of getting everyone else on his side. That's how it went down, and I wanted out. I wanted out. It subconsciously. Not in my head. In my head, I didn't. But looking back at it, I was laying bombs everywhere. I needed the off time. I needed all those years afterwards. It wasn't easy, but it was good for me. It was really good. And we were not functioning either anymore. We functioned until the point Kai was there. Like when Kai was no longer part of it, we continued, but the balance was gone. The balance was gone. It was not working anymore. So it was actually, as painful as it was for me, especially in the first number of years, I think Andy Darius was what the band needed. It was what the band needed. It gave the band a new focus. We didn't get along anymore. We were just fighting and arguing the whole time. So it was just the right thing to do. And now it feels even better. Now it feels even better than in the early days. Maybe because we're all older and we're a little wiser. We appreciate it more, and you can kind of work with a whole mountain of work. You can work with lots of records and many years that the band had played live and gained fans and stuff like that, and it makes live a lot easier, especially in times like these. Not only the pandemic, but in times where like the YouTube channels are flooded with artists. Like everybody is an engineer, everybody is a producer, everybody is a musician and stuff like that. And of course, some of them are, but the majority is not. They're just playing a game, and it's so difficult for young bands these days to get through. It's very difficult. And you don't sell records. In metal, you still sell a little, but in general, it's not really appreciated anymore the way it should actually be. I think, like record productions. I hope it's going to come back. I hope that the younger generations are kind of reconsidering supporting a music culture, not just live, but also record productions and stuff, which needs to be financed. Doesn't make any sense if no one wants to pay for it anymore, But what I was trying to say, it's much easier for a band like us that has had such a long history to exist than it is for young bands to build something up, because there is not a lot of help, and everybody uses the mediums that are there where you can get somewhere. Like someone like, which is not my cup of tea, but someone like Justin Bieber started his career over YouTube. And there have been a whole bunch of artists who started like that, but that's difficulty in these days because it's so big. It's like everybody is there, you know.
And anyone can record an album. So technology has, you've been through your whole career, you've been through all the changes in the music industry. You released vinyl, cassettes, CDs, DVDs, MP3s, now streaming is ruling. What do you think it's the advantage and the main disadvantage of the technology world for releasing an album?
The disadvantage is, like you said, that everybody, even with very little talent, can squeeze everything in a direction that it seems like he's a musician or her. You know, you don't even have to sing anymore. You can just sing shitty and then you tune everything. You know, you make it on the computer, which is ridiculous. You know, and when you look at those ages that where the Beatles recorded their stuff and they did the first sort of multi-track recording, they had to be able to play all that stuff, and everything was pretty much live. And then they did a few overdubs or whatever, but even those were live. You know, there was no dropping or things like that. We had a bit of dropping possibilities in the 80s, but it was like, you know, dropping in like where you got off and continue, or like, or maybe you could drop a line. And then later on, like in the early 90s, like when we did, I remember that when we did like Pink Bubbles and Chameleon, you actually started to be able to program the remote control, that the remote control could punch in and out, you know. But that was pretty much it compared to what you can do now. That was the Stone Ages, you know. So that's the disadvantage, that you can fake it, you know. You can fake it, and a lot of people that would normally never considered to call themselves musicians, you know, like in my teenage years, many of them, the majority of them, would never. They would have been hobby musicians, but nobody would consider them real musicians. And now they can fake it, and if they never play live, nobody is ever even going to notice, you know, because all they know is those videos. But the advantage is, especially now that it has become so difficult to sell records, that you can make good records cheaper now. I mean, I'm recording an acoustic album here, and I can meet the total standards that you, from the sound quality that you used to have in the golden ages of record productions, and that's great. It's absolutely great. I mean, it all started in the 90s with these concepts, which I did too on my very first solo record, is that some people rented, like the Chili Peppers rented a house. They all lived in there and got the equipment in it and recorded. Stuff like that is very easily possible now. It's great that you do not have to spend thousands and thousands or hundred thousands of euros of dollars to make a record production anymore. It helps. Otherwise, we would be doomed. You wouldn't have music anymore, you know. So without the advantage of technology, it would be a nightmare, actually. You know?
How about as a music consumer point of view? Are you still a music fan? Do you still listen to new bands, or do you still have your heroes? Who are your music heroes?
I grew up with Elvis. That was actually who I was, like 8 years or something. It was 8 or 9 when he died. It got pretty silent about him because he was not doing well. You know, the last 4 years in his life, he didn't want to be Elvis anymore. So he sort of slowly destroyed himself. This is how I see it. He kind of, and this is some of the guys of the Memphis Mafia said the same thing. He didn't want to be Elvis anymore, and that's why he kind of destroyed himself, you know. But it's like, so in those last couple of years, when I was way too young when he was in his prime, I was a little baby, but I can still remember a little bit of 73, the Aloha from Hawaii. I know that my parents watched it, and I have little memories of that. But I was too young when he was in his prime. But when he died, they started to show all the stuff on TV, and that was actually the first time that it made sense to me to put music on vinyl. Before that, I was just listening to fairy tale records, and I thought that's the only meaning. Music makes no sense. But when I saw Elvis, I noticed music is cool, So it started with Elvis, and then later on, I met a friend that I'm still friend with, and he got me into the Beatles, and we started to sing Beatles songs, and he also got me into metal, and I actually got into metal in the perfect time. It was around Number of the Beast from Iron Maiden, Screaming for Vengeance from Judas Priest. I could name hundreds of key records that were the album of those bands. I got into Metallica before they made their first record, because their demo tape was already circling in Europe, and we already knew it, and I had their first album, and I was very into them up to Master of Puppets. They lost me with Justice for All. I didn't like that one, and they got me back again with the Black Album, which I actually just got as a DVD audio high resolution surround mix, which is amazing. Anyone who likes the Black Album, that's the one to get. You can finally hear the orchestra, and nothing else matters, because it's completely just on the back speakers. It's a great. Bob Rock did it. They did the surround mix of it. It does. You can't buy it officially anymore. It was a limited run. I bought it on eBay, way too expensive, but it's worth it. It's a great album. But I was always into various types of music. And when I got into metal, and I really was into metal, I mean, I had the room at my mother's house was covered with Eddie posters. It was the main music I was listening to, but I did not stop listening to Elvis. I also, from the beginning on, from Joshua Tree, I love U2. I was into Eurythmics, Kate Bush. Since I was playing the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel on acoustic guitar, I was into Simon and Garfunkel. And nowadays, I have rediscovered some of the older stuff that I was too young to understand it, and now it blows me away. Like Billy Joel, for instance, the records of the '70s. What a musician, amazing. Or older stuff from Elton John. I buy all those stuff if I can as super audio CDs. Super audio.
Mm-hmm.
There was an Elton John album from the early '70s that I did not even know. And it's a fantastic album. It's just no hit single on it. It's a great record, But it's like nowadays, I listen like 90% classical music, just classical music. The big heroes like Beethoven, Wagner, Bach, Mozart, Haydn, Handel, Brahms. Those guys. It's like, especially Beethoven. This is my all-time favorite forever. I feed from that music. It feeds me. And very silent stuff, like Cara Dillon, who is an Irish folk singer, Kate Rusby, or an American new folk singer that I just discovered. I think she's amazing, Lydia Luce. The last two records are amazing. When I listen to more kind of rock stuff, if I feel for it, it's older stuff. It's usually like from the '80s. I didn't like the overly brutal metal that became famous in the '90s. Like Slipknot and stuff like that. It's just hell. If you just have your ear on hell,
You like the harmonies and the melodies, and you come from a city where the Beatles started. So do you like the kind of histories and things behind the music?
They don't really make anything with it. They destroyed the Star Club. They just destroyed it. The club where they played, and they made a little museum there, with fake cars and a little. Who needs that? They should have preserved the Star Club. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Typical. It's so typical.
But you like classical music. You live in a place where you have the best orchestras, right? You often go to see like the Philharmonie in Berlin or other orchestras in Germany.
I actually did not. I did not very often. A few times, but I'm really mainly like super audio CDs. You know, this is you can control it. You can do it your way. But who knows? Maybe I might do that a little bit more after the pandemic. You know, there's going to be a whole new appreciation.
And Brazil, I suppose, plays an important part in your career. I mean, you have many fans here, and Brazil is one of the most important markets for Helloween. And you came here, you played fantastic concerts with Unisonic, and the fans here are crazy about your career. How's your relationship with Brazil? What are your best memories? Do you know? Are you familiar with the music here? With, I don't know, bossa nova or other kind of Brazilian music?
Oh yeah, I mean Brazil is always something where European people always have like a very positive look at Brazil. I mean, even when you just get the images from TV, you just see beautiful people on the beach. You know, not like us with floppy stomachs, like ape and stuff like that. No, the image that comes from South America and especially Brazil is always very positive. You know, like great nature and stuff like that. This is what you usually see on TV. You know. For us as a band, of course, I mean, South America is always a place where you love to go. And with Helloween, the last concert that we did, the very last concert was Rock in Rio. You know, it was amazing. We played right in front of Iron Maiden, you know, and it was fantastic. Um, that's definitely something I'm looking forward to when we can finally play there again. You know, I hope it's not going to be that long. I hope it's next year. Really, it's got to be. You know.
Yeah, what are the plans for this tour? Are you already scheduling concerts, or are you guys waiting to see what will happen? I mean,
Oh
the
yeah,
album will be out on the 18th of June, and it's great to have the music to so we were able to listen. But we want to see the band live again.
this is what we're all about. They have moved the tour twice. You know, it was supposed to happen last year, and then they moved it to the beginning of this year, and now they moved it to the beginning of next year. I think they're probably still too early because of Germany. I'm sure Brazil will be quicker. I mean, North America. I mean, I hear that they're already doing shows,
Yeah.
and I have the information from Chris Irvine, who calls himself Chris Jericho. Who's, I don't know if you know the guy. He's a Helloween fan. He's a great guy. He told me that Guns N' Roses is planning a stadium tour already this summer. This summer.
End of July, first show.
If that really happens, you know, many countries will be much quicker than us. We're probably going to be in another lockdown in December or something like that. It's like we always overdo things. When we do things, we always overdo them.
And Michael, before I let you go, I think this is a very special moment of your career.
Yeah.
And what would you say to the 18-year-old Michael Kiske that you're so young when you joined the band, right? Like, what would you
Yeah,
tell
look,
this guy here if you could meet
I
him?
I shown that particular picture to Jorn Lunde. You know, on Avantasia too, and he said, "You look better now. You look like a girl there."
This is fantastic, man. This album is amazing, and you're very courageous when that came out because you released a single, 12-minute single, or even the radio edit was like 7 minutes, or you're
Yeah.
all crazy at the time. I
Right now,
remember it was a great impact on all of us
I
music fans.
prefer the second keeper because my voice was better. We did the second keeper was recorded after we did the first world tour, so we were better. We were just better as a band. I sound like a baby on keeper one. I wish I could just re-record everything. But of course it was special. Yeah. It was. I started to join. I joined the band when I was 17. I think it was the first talks with Waiki and figuring things out, and I did the first record when I was 18. Yeah.
Did you need a special permit from your parents to be able to play at clubs and venues?
Funny enough, no. I think those days were a little more relaxed. Today you need like a license for everything. You need a license to breathe, you know. In those days, no. Funny enough, I was able to tour the whole world at the age of 18 and 19. And actually, in America, I think in America, I don't know how we did it actually, because in America it's 21.
Yeah.
But maybe because I'm German. You know, I'm
and
not.
you joined the van, got in the van with all the.
I'm not under American law when it comes to when I'm at full age. And as a German, when you're 18, you are an adult, and you can vote, you can drink, you can do what you want. In America, I think it's 21. But maybe because I'm German, it didn't. I mean, I probably would have not been able to enter certain clubs or something like that. But I was able to tour. We toured like 3 months or 2 months through the US in 87 when I was 18. And it was no problem. Must have been in those days that when you're German, you fall under that law or something like that. To a certain extent, probably. I think you have. Oh yeah, there you are. It was freezing. Your picture was freezing.
Oh, sorry. Well, it was great chatting with you, and we love the band, and we love the fact that you guys are all playing together again and enjoying yourselves, with each other, and you can feel the energy that comes from the stage.
Everything is perfect. It's such a pain in the ass that we can't tour because it's like everything's perfect. We started, it all works. The album is great. We're sitting here having to wait and not knowing when you can tour, and you also don't know how scared will people be. When this pandemic is over, I guarantee you, even like 4 years afterwards, you will still see people wearing masks. Those overcounts. Those really scared ones,
Yeah, for sure. But I really like to thank you, and it's funny because it took you a long time to reunite with the band, and now you have to stay at home.
It's insane, but it's for everybody. You must not take it personally. That's really important. It's not us. It's the whole world. It doesn't matter who it is, I mean, of course, it's like when Germany is like behind with progress or something like that, and you see other countries being open, we would just go there and play there then, but it has been quite difficult the last couple of months over here, with lots of restrictions and heavy lockdowns, and even when I will be going to Karlsruhe on Sunday because we make another video shoot, and I will not be able to enter the hotel without a corona test. So I need to do a test on Saturday that's valid 24 hours to get into the hotel, just to get into the hotel. That's how extreme. Is it like that in Brazil?
No, it's not, but it should be a bit more strict because it's crazy here. Brazil is the second country in number of dead people, so it's too loose. It needs a bit more. We're not Germany. It's the opposite, probably the opposite.
Yeah, we are the other extreme for sure. Yeah, and I heard Canada is pretty heavy too, like very strict to a certain extent.
And you guys been vaccinated yet?
I haven't. I will. I will when I'm not in a hurry. I want to do the old-fashioned one. They're coming now. I think there are 3 of the classical vaccinations coming. Those are like coronavirus killed, and that's all you get. That's the best way, I think, to trigger the immune system. The other ones are probably also fine, but I'm not in a hurry. I don't need it unless we really are touring. Then we definitely need it.
Fantastic.
At least for some countries.
Yeah. Okay, Michael. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, I
Sure.
met you here when you played with Unisonic Monsters of Rock. I was able to interview you and Kai, and you've always been a very nice and friendly guy. So I have to thank you for the music, but also for being such a nice person.
Well, we're just normal, like everyone. Most people are nice. Did you notice?
Yeah, thank God.
They are assholes, but the majority of people are nice. I really think so.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have to be hopeful and believe that, you know, most things are good. The exception, it's not, but
It's always the assholes that search power. And that's why they cause so much trouble. You know, they always somehow they have a lust for control and power and stuff like that. You know, they're probably guided by the demons, you know.
but it's great that you can spread the energy and the goodwill and the message with your music, and you can reach so many people with that. So thank you for
Yeah.
the music as
You
well, man.
know, a final word. You know, it is very true. Not you and me, we cannot change the world. But if everybody who wants a better world does whatever he can or her can in the surrounding you're in the job you are, the world will change for the better. Because if everybody does it, it's unstoppable, isn't it? That's the
Great
way it is.
message.
Yeah.
Great thinking. Great message from Michael Kiske. Fantastic, legendary singer, man. Thank you so much
Very
once
pleasant.
again.
Okay. See you.